Chapter 1036, I am the knife, and they are fish. Jiang Shui was dumbfounded. It took a long time for him to regain his senses. He had known Lu Shu for a long time, but he had asked such a question in this serious situation. He smiled. I had thought that you wanted to ask me about why I was on Earth. Lu Shu paused for 2 seconds. Do you want to talk about that? Then say it. Why don't we talk about world peace? From Jiang Shui's distress, plus 199. They laughed. It was like a riddle. Jiang Shui did not want to reveal this reason. The mystery had been broken down, but never completely solved. Actually, you don't have to take the trouble to find the way home. It is already open. The news will reach the palace soon, said Jiang Shui. But I won't be able to help you until I settle something. The way home. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. The news that the Black Feather Army had infiltrated the earth had not reached the palace. But there was no concealing the truth. The Black Feather Army has infiltrated Earth, said Jiang Shui. But for some unknown reason, the first batch of soldiers has been completely eliminated. This was like a bolt from the blue. He asked urgently, where is the entrance? I have never gone through that space pathway, so I don't know. Jiang Shui shook his head. Lu Shu was dazed. The entrance was definitely within the range of the heavenly network, as he was very clear that no other organization on Earth would be able to completely eliminate the Black Feather Army. Only the heavenly network could do so. But if there was a war, there would definitely be injuries. There were no exceptions. Lu Shu had asked Zhang Weiyu before. Even a strong army like the Imperial Dragon soldiers occasionally had injuries. Lu Shu's expression darkened. Duanmu Huangqi is behind this, right? Duanmu Huangqi secretly left the palace last night, said Jiang Shui. He probably knows something, but from the looks of it, he does not know much. You must be careful. What power does the West region have in the palace? Lu Shu asked calmly. A lot, said Jiang Shui. Duanmu Huangqi engaged in conspiracies against the palace. But what had happened at the West region has exceeded his expectations. He had no choice but to leave the palace temporarily. Where are they? Lu Shu asked. Are you planning to kill them? Jiang Shui furrowed his eyebrows. They have many people. While he spoke, he raised his hand and separated the clouds in the sky. The clouds were like a barrier to the imperial palace that was opening. The senior disciple of the sword hut sat on the rear mountain, overlooking the palace. He pointed at a brothel that was lit up by torches. Tonight, I am the knife, and they are fish. Lu Shu got up and ran down the mountain. Jiang Shui looked up. Suddenly, he saw that the clouds were moving along with Lu Shu. It was as if there were clouds accompanying him as he went down the mountain. Stopping heavenly visions was an ability of a master. But Jiang Shui knew that Lu Shu was still far away from the master realm. He has not changed at all. Jiang Shui looked up at the moon. All the clouds outside the sword hut had followed Lu Shu. They only returned to the sky when Lu Shu went down. Lu Shu calmly looked at Gu Lingfei. Can I trouble you to bring me down the mountain? Gu Lingfei placed her hand on Lu Shu's arm. In an instant, they returned to Lu Shu's cottage. Thank you. Lu Shu did not say anything else. He walked out of the sword hut. He had remembered the location where the West Region army was hiding. Gu Lingfei observed this scene. Suddenly, she felt that this young man was not the same person as in her memories. The past Lu Shu was often improper and gave others the impression that he was harmless. But the Lu Shu tonight made Gu Lingfei feel a sense of danger. Have we met somewhere? Gu Lingfei suddenly asked. As Lu Shu walked, he waved goodbye to Gu Lingfei. Maybe. When he reached the entrance of the sword hut, he turned and looked at the two statues on the lawn. He smiled. Then, he walked out of the sword hut with a sense of justice. The clouds concealed the sword hut once again. The moment Lu Shu stepped out, he looked at the nebula fruit in his celestial map. It takes too much time to eat these. Change them. When Lu Shu stepped out of the clouds, the option for the galaxy fruit appeared out of thin air. Senior Gu Lingfei. As Gu Lingfei watched Lu Shu walk out of the clouds, someone called her. She turned back and saw a disciple timidly standing behind her. Gu Lingfei asked in doubt, "Is something the matter?" "I have opened the Sea of Qi and Snowy Mountain. Before doing so, I have merged clouds into rain. I would be able to merge rain into rivers. It was a pity that I could not maintain it while I was going to the toilet," said the disciple carefully. Gu Lingfei furrowed her eyebrows. What did this have to do with anything? And then? Can I leave my name in the Sword Hut records? I heard that the Sword Hut records have been taken out, said the Sword Hut disciple. Typically, Gu Lingfei was more strict. As a master, she had a formidable aura as well. Furthermore, he had only merged clouds into rain. Thus, he was slightly meek when he spoke. But Gu Lingfei did not mind. She understood. So that's what you wanted. Come with me to the ceremonial cottage. Call the other disciples who have not left their names in the records as well. Let all those who were supposed to write in the records do so. There was no threshold for leaving one's name in the Sword Hut records. Whoever had opened their Sea of Qi and Snowy Mountain were able to leave their name. Gu Lingfei had taken the Sword Hut records from Lu Shu to allow everyone to write their names inside. However, Lu Shu's constant mischief caused her to forget about this. When the disciples had gathered in the ceremonial cottage, Gu Lingfei was already sitting on the seat of honor. She pointed at the Sword Hut records on the table. Write in the records yourselves. Once you have thought about it, you can write. The disciples excitedly opened the Sword Hut records. First, they gazed at the achievements of their seniors with reverence. Then, they flipped to the last page and prepared to leave their mark. Suddenly, the disciples were dumbfounded. This is... Gu Lingfei furrowed her eyebrows. What's wrong? Senior, come and look at this, said a disciple after much hesitation. Gu Lingfei got up and walked over. When she saw the Sword Hut records, she was dumbfounded. There is a snowy mountain in the sea. If I cannot open the Sea of Qi, I will chop down the snowy mountain to do so. Aren't I amazing? Lu Shu. The ceremonial hall was silent. The first part sounded quite mighty, but the second part was annoying. From Gu Lingfei's distress, plus 666. From. But after their complaints, everyone suddenly realized that ordinary people, and even the head of the Sword Hut, had only merged rivers into oceans. On the other hand, Lu Shu had his snowy mountain even before he opened his Sea of Qi. Chapter 1037, Nothing to do except for committing suicide, holding funerals, and hunting. If Lu Shu had a good flair and could compose a good poem, he would have been an author. If he could write a best-selling book, he would be to collect enough distress points to allow him to advance to rank 1. However, unfortunately, he did not have the flair. Therefore, he did not know what to write for the last sentence on the Sword Hut records. He decided to make a rhyme as that was what he could do. However, that was not the main issue. The main issue was that Lu Shu had already surpassed the most powerful person who had opened the Sea of Qi and Snowy Mountain. Before Lu Shu, nobody else was able to create snowy mountains. Before opening the Sea of Qi, he would probably be the first and only one to do that. The entire Sword Hut was shocked. All the disciples ran over to look at the words that Lu Shu left behind on the Sword Hut records. That night was destined to be a sleepless night for the Sword Hut. Nobody would ever write lies on the Sword Hut records, but yet, the first person to do so in history had probably appeared. What's wrong, Senior Linshan? Someone asked concernedly when he saw Tang Linshan stunned silent. Tang Linshan regained his senses. I know why he is able to discover the secret of the sword spirit. When Tang Linshan said that, the others regained their senses too. Based on the first half of the poem, there is a snowy mountain in the sea. If I cannot open the Sea of Qi, Lu Shu was unable to open the Sea of Qi because he was suppressed by the snowy mountain. Therefore, Lu Shu severed the snowy mountain to reopen the Sea of Qi. How bold was that? Because of this boldness, the route of practice for the sword hut advanced to a whole new level. They did not know that Lu Shu did all of that because he was sabotaged. If he had known that the founder of the Hall of Swords only managed to gather rivers into seas, he would have definitely opened the snowy mountains when he gathered rivers into seas. Perhaps, Lu Shu liked to take it to the extreme. Perfection was the weakness of a gifted individual. However, Lu Shu was never defeated by it. Everything had imperfections, including the heavenly law. Many people thought that it was perfect if there was a 10% imperfection, as it was an understandable amount. However, Lu Shu insisted on pursuing for that 10%. That was because he was born different from others. Lu Shu strolled around the palace. He had swallowed the galaxy fruit and was feeling it surge in his body, causing his celestial powers to expand like never before. However, the fifth level of nebula never opened. Lu Shu had to face some difficulty every single time he opened the next level. When he managed to break through the trap, the second star would become the main star while the other stars would orbit around it. On top of the main star, the dagger belonging to that level would accumulate. And now, the fourth level of nebula did not move an inch. That was because Lu Shu was still unable to find the chance to make a breakthrough. His swordplay was already at the level of a rank 1, but his celestial map did not reach the same level. That was because Lu Shu had always been worried that if his celestial map attained rank 1, he would invite trouble because of the huge movements. However, Lu Shu was frustrated. He could not contain his anger when he recalled how the Black Feather Army attacked the Heavenly Network. The prosperity of the palace was beyond imagination. At night the commoners and the aristocrats would stroll along the streets. In the past, people still sat on the boats along the Longyin River. Now, as the number of people that jumped into the Longyin River increased, nobody sat on the boats anymore. They stopped sitting on the boats and returned to the city, causing the city to become extremely busy. The city was bustling with activities. Children spun their spinning tops in the middle of the road, the bright lanterns shining on top of them. Women looked at the rouge along the road and wondered if they had enough money to buy a new one this month. To women, the best rouge was the one they had yet to purchase. Those at home were not counted. However, the bustle died down eventually and people had to go back home eventually. At this moment, there were very few people on the streets of the palace. As Lu Shu walked, he saw shadows in the dark alley. With a flick of his fingers, Lu Shu was able to send out an invisible beam of sword energy. In the alley, people were taken by surprise and only managed to respond with a low groan. Today, there were many spies outside the sword hut. Those who wanted to walk to the entertainment center where the Western region's troop was hiding it was in danger too. Lu Shu's swordplay had already reached the level of rank 1 and their enemies could easily tell. Now, only people sent by Duanmu Huangqi dared to spy outside the sword hut. The fight between Duanmu Huangqi and the sword hut was like a game of chess between two chess players. Nobody would bet all their assets and therefore had to continuously test each other. Meanwhile, Lu Shu did not care what chess setting it was. He would always be the person who turned the chess game over. In the middle of the night, shadows could be seen in the alley. Everyone looked coldly at Lu Shu who was walking by the limestone bricks. At the next moment, Lu Shu suddenly became wild and a dagger which was shining with a green radiance shot out from the dark alley from the left. Just before the dagger could hit Lu Shu's face, Lu Shu suddenly leaped up and caught the dagger while making a turn. He managed to throw the dagger back in one smooth motion. When the dagger moved back, it traveled at a speed faster than the approaching speed. The sharp whistle broke the silence and the red pattern expanded out from the alley. Some villagers looked outside their door to check out what had happened. However, they only managed to see blood oozing out gradually in the dark alley as the blood slowly dripped down from the limestone bricks. They spread out as they flowed along the cracks of the limestone bricks. Meanwhile, in between the limestone bricks, a crack was seemingly stepped open by someone else. Lu Shu sprang towards the entertainment center. Along the way, many people died at the part-muted section. Suddenly, a gigantic black net came down above Lu Shu's head. However, before it could land on his head, the person who spread the net at the top of the house had died from the invisible sword energy. In the palace, there seemed to be another gigantic net surrounding Lu Shu. People flipped on the rooftop, and those who were close to the limestone bricks would undergo freefall in the middle of their leap. The soldiers wearing black armor and black masks were extremely determined and were unafraid of death. Everyone who Duanmu Huangqi brought over were his underlings. A small crack was formed on the clouds in the sword hut. Gu Lingfei stood behind Jiang Shui, looking at the road made of limestone bricks which was stained with blood. Jiang Shui said that the 1,000 faces of Annotato annotation ID equals C2A5B740593247D9B1CF6C41A35A588 Fa. Duenjia/Ano is indeed amazing. The entertainment center was at the West Nankung Palace. I wanted to say that Duanmu Huangqi had chosen the wrong location and forcefully placed his underlings on the road of death. Many people would die on this journey from the east to the west. Road of death? Gu Lingfei frowned. Where did you learn this from? What does the road of death mean? Jiang Shui replied calmly, the road of death is the most cruel. Apart from committing suicide, holding funerals, and hunting, nothing else could be done. He is really so powerful? Duanmu Huangqi left 12 soldiers at that place, said Gu Lingfei. Jiang Shui suddenly laughed. He said, tonight, he would be the knife and they would be the fish. Chapter 1038, Nobody on the Limestone Bricks. From outside, the entertainment center looked as if it was bustling with activities. However, there were times where it was completely silent. 12 rank 1 soldiers dressed in flowery serpent clothes were resting in the hall. The serpents on the serpent clothing were extremely terrifying. They looked as though they could consume humans. The ordinary candle lights were flickering, but the candle in the middle of the hall remained burning in the upright position, as though it were frozen in place. The powerful auras exuded by the 12 rank 1 soldiers seemed to have frozen the entire place. There was a white serpent mark on the back of their necks. The scales on the gigantic serpent looked like eyes. Everyone knew that there were 12 slaves under the rule of the West Lord of Heaven. These slaves were more powerful than rank 1s and were the underlings of Duanmu Huangqi. However, very few people knew that Duanmu Huangqi had placed all of these 12 slaves in the palace to wait for the perfect moment to take action. Nobody knew what they were waiting for. Every year on the day of the ceremony of the Sword Hut, people from the Luniverse would go over to the palace to watch the ceremony. Therefore, the palace was extremely crowded and bustling with activities. However, this year, the amount of people who came were exceptionally greater than past years, especially the experts. All of them had their own motives and nobody knew who supported them. Meanwhile, on that night, all of them showed their teeth. They began a large-scale hunt on the road made up of limestone bricks in the palace. The underlings brought by the 12 soldiers weaved through the buildings of the palace like black leopards. The shadows who were initially scattered around the palace gathered quickly towards the road made up of limestone bricks. Lu Shu was still running. Some people said that the palace was so big that a rank 1 expert could not fly across it in just one day. That was an exaggeration as the people did not know exactly how big the palace was. They knew that the rank 1 soldiers could not fly at the restricted airspace in the palace. Even though they knew that a rank 1 soldier could probably cover the palace within half a day, nobody bothered to prove it. The villagers took pride in the size and grandeur of the palace. However, now, for Lu Shu, it felt like it was a road with no return. At least, that was what some of the aristocrats thought. Lu Shu dashed from the east to the west. He did not know how much longer he had to run and how many people would attack him along the way. He did not know how long Duanmu Huangqi had planned for the sword hut's retaliation. Because of him and his intention to kill, Duanmu Huangqi showed off his powers by using all of them on Lu Shu. Lu Shu was not concerned about that. He would kill anyone who wanted to attack him. In the dark, many people sprung sneak attacks on Lu Shu. Sounds of people stepping on bricks on the rooftop beside the path of limestone bricks could be heard, and it followed Lu Shu as he ran. Many people died. The underlings figured out that Lu Shu was not easily dealt with. However, none of them were unwilling to die because attacking Lu Shu was their mission. At the next moment, dozens of people pounced from the rooftop. They attacked at the same time and came from different directions. Lu Shu, who was running furiously, suddenly stopped. Due to the sudden stop, the immense force caused the limestone brick to crack open and the broken pieces flew in the sky. In the blink of an eye, the underlings pounced over like ferocious beasts. However, these beasts suddenly realized that Lu Shu, instead of showing fear, was laughing. "Fish meat has bones, but isn't it still fish meat?" laughed Lu Shu. At that moment, the underlings who were still in the sky realized that Lu Shu pulled something down from the sky. Suddenly, everyone felt chills down their bodies and a sharp pain. It was the invisible sword energy. However, they did not realize that Lu Shu had hung the invisible sword energy in the sky. Swords fell like the rain. This was the biggest attack Lu Shu had met along the way. However, it did not pose a threat to him at all. The underlings who remained on the rooftops of the buildings narrowed their eyes as they examined Lu Shu carefully. They continued chasing after him and waited for the ripe opportunity. Read more chapter on our VIPnovel.com. The people who did not know what happened in the palace initially were definitely aware of the situation, as the road made up of limestone bricks was stained with blood. Countless pairs of eyes stared quietly at the palace in the night sky. They were speculating about how much bloodshed there would be that night. When would Lu Shu finally die? Or when would Lu Shu stop killing others? Xiao Mingze, the boss of the Song gambling den, was pacing back and forth in the garden of his house. At that moment, a middle-aged man with a slightly black complexion walked out and looked at Xiao Mingze. "What's up?" "Master, should we help him?" said Xiao Mingze. To the boss of the Song gambling den, Lu Shu was his money tree. Moreover, as they knew each other for a long time, Chief Officer Zhao Shuai also wanted him to ask for help. They were the first batch of aristocrats whom Lu Shu had gotten in touch with. Nobody expected such things to happen. The young man of the Wei Wu army killed hundreds of lives along the road, and his opponent was the Lord of Heaven from the West region. "A wise man will stay away from danger," said the master of the Song family, Leave. In fact, he had already made his decision when he asked Zhao Shuai to return from Nanging City. The wealthy families in the palace were able to last for thousands of years because they stayed away from trouble. "Roger, I will leave." Zhao Shuai bowed and took his leave. Sometimes, Zhao Shuai really wanted to leave the wealthy Song family and make his own living, but he had no idea where he could go. Without Lu Shu, they still had to live on, right? The wealthy families in the palace were still wealthy families, nobody cared about the details. At this moment, Sun Zhongyang stood at the door of his father's study room. "Dad, I want to help him. He once saved my life. Although I have returned his favor through the magical armor, a life is priceless." Sun Xiwenwen, who was reading a book, said calmly, "Even if I let you go, you won't be able to help him." Sun Zhongyang had always respected his father, as his father was not only the one with the most potential to become a master in the palace, but also because he was extremely intelligent. "What do you mean by this?" Sun Zhongyang was stunned. "You underestimated him and overestimated yourself." Sun Xuanwen smiled and looked up at Sun Zhongyang. Go and practice your skills. You will be able to help him when you reach the master realm. Sun Zhongyang suddenly realized that his father was supportive of his idea, but felt that Sun Zhongyang was unable to help Lu Shu. How powerful must Lu Shu be in order for his father to come to this conclusion? Chapter 1039, One of them died just like that? Lu Shu was killing people, but everyone knew that Duanmu Huangqi had other escape plans. Sun Zhongyang did not help Lu Shu. Xiao Mingze and Zhao Shuai did not either. Father and son sat facing each other. Sun Xuanwen said to Sun Zhongyang, if he is unable to last tonight, there will be no more fights in the future. If he is able to bear it, even if Duanmu Huangqi is able to remain standing, I do not mind if the Sun family is to be there at his beck and call. Sun Zhongyang straightened his clothes and thought about it. Then, he said, if he is able to last, what heights will he be able to achieve in the future? You have the attitude of a large family, but your abilities are only enough to lead the entire family. You must observe and learn. You have to be on your own in 5 years, said Sun Xuanwen. You didn't answer my question. Sun Zhongyang leaned forward slightly. Sun Xuanwen waved his hand and smiled. It's because I don't know the answer either. If he did not know something, he would admit it. Sun Zhongyang understood that his father had always been like this. The still candles in the brothel suddenly trembled. One of the people closed his eyes and said, someone, go out and take a look. Bring his head back. The patron got up. I will do it. The person in the seat of honor nodded his head in agreement. The slaves serving the Lord of Heaven had their own pride. The masters were separated into strong and weak masters. It was the same for rank ones. The patrons quietly sitting here were all veterans who had trained for many years. They had the appearance of a middle-aged person due to their long lifespan. Duanmu Huangqi had countless slaves, but only 12 of them had survived. This was proof of their ability. Duanmu Huangqi had ordered them to stay here for a greater plan. It would not be affected by a ferocious young man. Everyone had seen how Duanmu Yunj and Li Liang had fallen. How could they not respect someone who killed their own child? The person on the seat of honor suddenly looked at the middle-aged man on his left. You go as well. The middle-aged man cupped his hands in a farewell gesture. Yes. The rest of the patrons looked at their commander in the seat of honor helplessly. They did not expect him to use 2 men to kill just one young man. The seating arrangement in the central room was deliberate. The seat of honor was to be respected. Those who were strong sat on the left, while those who were weak sat on the right. This meant that out of the 12 of them, the strongest was the person in the seat of honor, followed by the person on his left. Did they need so many people to kill this young man? They had killed many geniuses who were not much weaker than this young man. Although they did not know why this young man had suddenly come from the sword hut and started killing people, it was probably because Duanmu Huangqi had wanted to execute him. Now, the news that Duanmu Huangqi had left the palace was leaked out. Did this young man think that he would be able to take revenge? When the patrons thought about this reason, they wanted to laugh. How childish. There was too much hate in this world. Everyone wanted to take revenge. Little did they know that their lives would be at stake. The 2 patrons walked out of the brothel one after another. They walked to the west along the limestone road. Neither of them slowed down. Once they were done killing, all they had to do was return and make a report. In addition to the 10 patrons, there were hundreds of underlings dressed in black. They knelt outside of the central room and listened to instructions. They quietly waited outside. This was one of Duanmu Huangqi's largest forces. That night, almost everyone in the palace did not see Lu Shu in a favorable light. When he faced the underlings of the West Lord of Heaven, he was like a deer amongst a pack of wolves. He was lost. The Sun family did not care about this because they felt that they could not control the situation. The Song family did not care because a person of great moral stature would distance himself away from danger. No matter what, no one felt that Lu Shu would definitely be able to win tonight, except for Jiang Shuyi. Gu Lingfei sat on the rear mountain. Typically, she had to be strict because she was the manager of the sword hut. If the disciples committed a mistake, she had to be the judge and issue punishments. She was like a form teacher on earth, but her class was slightly bigger and slightly stronger. "Brother, did you know him before this?" Gu Lingfei asked curiously. She supported her chin with her hands and looked at the limestone road. The young man was still running. It was more than just knowing him. Jiang Shuyi smiled and shook his head. This time, Gu Lingfei did not dig deep into Lu Shu's origins. Suddenly, she asked, "Has he always been so infuriating, or did he become infuriating later on?" Jiang Shuyi was dumbfounded. Then, he sighed. "He has always been that way." After the underlings received orders, they did not dare to act rashly. Since the great patrons under the Lord of Heaven had set off, they would have to wait for them to return. While Lu Shu was running, he looked up and laughed coldly at the underlings who were following him on the rooftops. When these people no longer attacked him, he knew that someone even stronger would do so. Jiang Shuyi had told him that there were 12 great patrons in the brothel. They were very dangerous. The wealthy families in the palace did not expect him to win, as they knew that Duanmu Huangqi had left behind 12 slaves with impressive military achievements. Many felt that if Lu Shu wanted to survive, it would be best to run away before he bumped into them. If Lu Shu knew that they were thinking, he would laugh out loud. He wanted to kill these 12 people. If he did not kill them, Lu Shu had wasted this night. Lu Shu ran on the limestone road, as if he was engulfed by all the clouds in the entire palace. He did not know how long he had been running for, but the palace looked at him the entire time. Suddenly the air behind him started to distort. This was not the ability of a master to destroy a void. It was as if someone was hiding in the air. The underlings along the road were like wolves, waiting for their leader to appear. Suddenly, one of the patrons appeared on the limestone road. The middle-aged man was holding. But before anyone could react, Lu Shu had lowered his body, turned, and punched. The first. The limestone bricks behind Lu Shu had been pieced together tightly. But the force when Lu Shu turned around spread over 100 meters, causing the limestone bricks within 100 meters to break into pieces. The first? What first? Before the patron could react, he saw that Lu Shu's fist had punched through the air and suddenly came to a stop. He even thought that he had seen the air breaking into pieces. Many thought that the 12 slaves under Duanmu Huangqi were strong enough, but they did not know that when Lu Shu advanced to rank 1, he was unmatched, except for masters. He was only afraid that there would be too many enemies. But now, they were coming for him one at a time. The houses along the side of the road suddenly shook and collapsed due to the massive force. The shop assistants, who were observing by the side, ran away. They did not dare to stay here for much longer. In total, 2 patrons came one after another. The patron who came later stood on the limestone road with a dark expression on his face. He did not expect that the earlier patron had already died. Many people in the palace were shocked. What? Are you sure? One of them died just like that. Chapter 1040, the 4th level of nebula has formed. The sound of Tao appeared again. This time, no gambling den in the palace opened any bets. If not, they would have been able to earn a lot of money. Xiao Mingzi sat on a rocking chair in the courtyard behind the gambling den. He felt as if he had missed out on an opportunity. He and Zhao Shuai interacted with Lu Shu the most. Thus, they had stronger feelings. For some reason, they now felt that Lu Shu would win this time. The wealthy families in the palace started to tremble because of the death of a patron. No one expected Lu Shu to kill one patron in a face-to-face battle. He was a veteran who had walked with Duanmu Huangqi for hundreds of years. How did he die just like that? When Lu Shu delivered his punch, he was very calm. He did not think that he would be unable to defeat the patron. When he only had the celestial map, he was the strongest among those who were of the same rank as him. After coming to the Luniverse and training again, it was not an overstatement to say that he was half a step into advancing to the Master Realm. Perhaps half a step was too much. Just a little was enough. When Lu Shu was rank 3, as long as he rushed for another month or two, he would be able to break free of the chains. But he did not do so. The benefits of undergoing training one more time were proven in this punch. It was like a mighty thunderbolt that broke through the clouds. It was too late for his enemy to even defend himself. The expressions of the underlings along the road grew serious. Even after they had lost many men, they did not expect this young man to have this kind of power. Lu Shu turned and looked at the patron at the end of the road. The second. If the air was not controlled in the palace, rank ones would have many abilities to showcase. But now, no one could fly. Furthermore, if Lu Shu flew, he was much faster than other rank ones, but there was a limit. However, it was different on the ground. Lu Shu had the absolute advantage in terms of physical strength. On Earth, no matter whether it was the Heavenly Network or other large organizations, they felt that strength-type experts were not very useful in their later stages. They were even reduced to being the bodyguards of elemental types. For example, when Lu Shu was fighting back on Earth, a metal type and a strength type had worked together, but the strength type was just there to ensure that Lu Shu did not approach the metal type. But Lu Shu felt that it was only because the strength type had not broken through the known limits. What if Lu Shu was able to break through those limits? The patron took precautions. He shouted in a cold tone, "Attack!" He wanted to use the lives of the underlings to slow Lu Shu down and buy enough time for himself. The underlings were shocked. When the patron ordered them to attack, it meant that he had admitted that he was at a disadvantage. He was not confident that he could kill Lu Shu with Lu Shu's speed. The next moment, the patron's arm trembled. A green bead fell from his ornamental thumb ring into his palm. Then, it shone radiantly. Symbols were projected from the green bead into the sky. Sun Zhongyang was sitting facing his father. The windows and doors were open. When the green symbols were projected into the sky, it was as if half the palace had been dyed green. Sun Xuanwen said, "This is the treasured bead bestowed by Duanmu Huangqi, Clear Autumn. There are a total of 9 symbols. Once they are formed in the sky, the person who owns the bead will decide who lives and dies in that area, unless they are of a higher realm." Sun Zhongyang looked up in the sky. The green symbols were in the sky. 3 new symbols appeared every second. He muttered, "There are 6 symbols. Is Lu Shu doing to die?" But at that moment, the symbols suddenly stopped forming. They no longer engulfed the land. Even the symbols in the sky had started to fade. What's happening? Sun Zhongyang was surprised. Lu Shu sped up on the limestone road. He covered 100 feet with every stride. He was as fast as a flying arrow. The underlings on the rooftops had started to throw knives at Lu Shu under the patron's orders. Lu Shu was 500 meters away from the patron. Within the 500-meter distance, underlings lined up on the road. Thus, while Lu Shu sprinted, all the underlings jumped down to block him. But they did not expect that even before they landed, Lu Shu had run past them. They could not even touch Lu Shu's clothes. It was as if this had been rehearsed. When Lu Shu ran past, the underlings landed on the ground. They were always one step behind him. This time, the limestone bricks that Lu Shu had stepped on did not break. But when the underlings stepped on them, they suddenly kicked up a storm of dust. The limestone bricks that Lu Shu had stepped on had turned into dust. In the dust, all the underlings felt that there was something very sharp flying through the dust and taking their lives. It was Lu Shu's sparrow shade. At first, when the third level of nebula appeared, 36 strands of sparrow shade had been produced. Lu Shu thought that this was the limit. Later on, he found out that for every star that lit up in the fourth level of nebula, the number of strands would multiply. Now, Lu Shu had lit up all 7 stars, and there were 2,304 strands. The strands pierced through the storm of dust as Lu Shu ran. It was like a spout that could destroy everything. It was a force that could not be stopped. Neither the underlings nor the patrons had expected this. From the very beginning, Lu Shu had not cared about the underlings. The underlings were not capable of slowing him down. Thus, when Lu Shu came to the patron, it was too late for the clear autumn ability to project the last 3 symbols. There was panic in the patron's eyes. The 9 black serpents on his clothes jumped out and charged towards Lu Shu. But with another punch, Lu Shu destroyed the 9 serpents without much effort. Even if the patron wanted to escape, it was too late. There was alarm in the patron's eyes. Suddenly, a massive black serpent appeared from behind the patron. It was spitting poison. But when he thought, he could not think of anything else, because he realized that Lu Shu's punch was just foreshadowing. Lying in ambush was Lu Shu's lightning aura blade. Even ordinary masters had to treat the threat of a heavenly punishment seriously, let alone a rank 1 patron. Finally, the patron's face, that had been unable to move, gradually grew twisted as he struggled. He had finally tasted the feeling of fear after countless years in the Luniverse. Lu Shu stood where he was and observed the patron. He sensed that the patron's fear was spreading throughout the heaven and the earth. Love, anger, sadness, fear, love, evil, and desire. These were the fortresses of the 7 levels of nebula. Lu Shu had guessed that the key to breaking through to the 5th level of nebula was fear. Lu Shu rarely felt fear, because he had always pressed forward with an indomitable will. But this did not mean that he would not be able to break through, as he could naturally make others feel fear. The celestial map rotated. The 4th level of nebula went to its position. Lu Shu looked at the sky. What was supposed to come would eventually come. The sound of Tao when the celestial map advanced to rank 1 should have been produced. A sound that engulfed the entire palace echoed. The sound was vast and clear. Twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. Lu Shu calmly looked at the sky. What in the world?
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on the show. Try to look to the heavens.